I used to create a completely separate files for every animation, and every time I wanted to change something, I had to do the whole process all over again. And then I found this feature in Aseprite. Suddenly, I could put all my animations into one file and let tags handle the rest. So, let me show you what changed. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you a little Sprite feature that completely changed the way I organize my animations. But first, let me show you how I used to do it. Before I found this feature, this was basically how I was handling my animations. For every animation, I would create a separate file. Each file had its own layers, its own size, and honestly, I wasn't really thinking about keeping everything consistent. The problem was that eventually all of these animations had to end up in the same sprite sheet. So every animation needed to have the exact same canvas size. I also had to make sure the character was positioned at the bottom of the canvas every time. Otherwise, when I played different animations in the game, the character would suddenly jump or down between them. So after finishing each animation, I had to bring them all into another file, stack them vertically, and then export the whole thing as a spreadsheet. And that was actually the easy part. The annoying part came when I got into Unity. For every animation, I had to manually select all the frames, set the frame rate, create the animation, and then set up an animator for it. It worked, but it was pretty slow process. And if I decided to change something in one of the animations later, I basically had to go through a big part of that process again. So when I started having more and more animations, I really started looking for a better way to organize all of this. So after doing this for a while, I started looking for a better way to handle my animations, and that's when I came across something called tags in Sprite. At first, I honestly didn't pay much attention to it. I had seen these little colored markers before, but I never really knew what they were supposed to do. Then I realized I could actually put all of my animations into the same file and use these tags to tell Sprite which frames belong to which animation. So instead of having one file for idle, another one for run, another one for jump, and so on, I could just have everything in one sprite sheet. Idle here, run here, jump here, attack here, and the tags would basically define where each animations start and end. And that's when I realized, wait, this could save me a lot of work. So I decided to rebuild my animation setup using this method and see how well it actually worked. So now that I had all of my animations organized in one file, it was time to see how this would actually work in Unity. And this is where I noticed the biggest difference. With my old workflow, I had to import the sprite sheet, manually select the frames for each animation, set the frame rate, create the animation, and then set up the animator. But with this setup, I could basically just import the file and let Unity handle the rest. The animations were automatically separated using the tags I had created in Aseprite. The frame rate was also carried over from the original file, so I didn't have to set it again for every animation. And Unity also created the animation setup for me, which meant I didn't have to manually build everything from scratch anymore. So instead of spending time setting up animations inside Unity, I could just focus on actually making the animations in Aseprite. And probably my favorite part is how easy it is to make changes now. If I want to change the run animation, for example, I just go back to the same Aseprite file, make the change, export it again, and update the file in Unity. I don't have to rebuild the animation or go through all those frames again. One file, one place to make change and all the animations stay organized. And compared to the way I was doing it before, this is so much easier. So yeah, this was a pretty small feature, but it actually made a big difference in the way I work. What I like about it is that I don't really have to think about the technical setup as much anymore. I can just open one Aseprite file, work on my animations, organize the tags, and then bring the whole thing into Unity. And especially when you're working on a game and constantly changing things, having everything in one place makes a huge difference. I think that's probably one of the things I've learned while making this game. Sometimes the problem isn't that your workflow is complicated. You just haven't found the right tool yet. And in my case, I was basically doing all of this manually without realizing there was such an easier way to do it. So, if you're also using Sprite for game development, this is definitely one of those features I recommend checking out. And who knows, maybe I'll find another feature I've been completely ignoring this whole time. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.